All right, and then finally, he kind of ends then his debate with now the main point that he's trying to get at. Why does God exist,
Right? He
right?
hasn't proven the existence of God yet.
Yeah,
Here
not
it
at all.
is.
He's just kind of doing a lot of clearing out brushes, right? And weeds and that sort of thing so that he can get his main point. So his main point, he says, is the transcendental argument for God's existence. And so he says he comes thirdly then to the transcendental proof of God's existence. How then should the difference of opinion between the theist and the atheist be rationally resolved? And he says, we've observed that belief in the existence of God is not tested in any ordinary way, right? Not by looking at crackers in the pantry, right? Like other factual claims. And the reason for that is metaphysically, because of the non-natural character of God, and epistemologically, because of the presuppositional character of commitment for or against his existence. So we test the existence of God, but not in, he says, the ordinary crackers in a box way, right? Because there's a metaphysical difference between just crackers in the box and God, and there's an epistemological issue that needs to be observed and pointed out, right? Which is the presuppositional character of commitment for or against God's existence.
Now, remember, he started out by laying the framework for the nature of the debate itself, and watch what he does here towards the end. So he's building up, and then I think there's a little mic drop that you might not realize if you're just listening to it. So I don't have the line, but I think you might hear. But arguments over conflicting presuppositionalists between worldviews, therefore, so we have these different commitments. Well, how are we having this debate? What's going to go on? What must we do? So he says, because there's these conflict between worldviews, therefore, they must be resolved somewhat differently and yet still rationally than conflicts over factual existence claims within a worldview or a system of thought. When we go to look at different worldviews that atheists and theists have, he suggests that you can prove the existence of God from the impossibility of the contrary, the transcendental proof for God's existence that without him, it is impossible to prove anything at all.
Right. So there it is. That he lays it out there. There it is, right? The impossibility of the contrary. That's his basic argument, right? If God doesn't exist, we can't prove anything at all. And so God must exist, right? That's notice, and the conclusion, God must exist. This isn't a probability statement.
Right.
God must exist, right? Because without God, we can't prove anything at all, right? That's the basic idea. He says the transcendental analysis asks what the preconditions for the intelligibility of human experience are. What are the preconceptions that must exist in order for us to know anything? Right? Human intelligibility. Or another way of putting it is asking, under what conditions is it possible to make sense of the world or to rationally experience it? So this is, again, Joshua kind of commentary here. And he says the atheist worldview is irrational and cannot consistently provide the preconditions of intelligible experience or science or logic or morality, right? The atheist worldview cannot allow for instance, the laws of logic. Doesn't allow for, right? Or the uniformity of nature. Why is nature uniform? Why does it always act the way it does, right? The ability of the mind to understand the world, moral absolutes. The atheist worldview doesn't allow for those types of things. And so in that sense, the atheist worldview cannot account for the debate tonight, right? Is how he ends it.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think that's it. He starts with the nature of the debate, and he ends with the nature of the debate. And it's really interesting to say, like, we sit in this coliseum and hash it out, but being able to sit in this coliseum to hash it out proves the existence of God. So even by stepping up to the podium, Dr. Stein, you admit that you need to borrow from the Christian worldview in order to make sense of it all.
You lost the debate before you started the debate.
Right. Accepted. Good. Lost. Thank you. I appreciate the win. Have a good night. Hey, what happened now? Yeah. And so Joshua Pills gives one last statement here. He says, given the lack of formality of presuppositionalism, at least in 1985, Bahnsen spent an extensive amount of time fleshing out the methodology of his apologetics, thus allocating just enough time to state the premise of the actual argument itself, transcendental, at the very end of his statement. Of course, he utilizes it subsequently in the debate, which we will see going forward.